He said, but you're mad that they behave a certain way. And when you look at Christianity, they say, hey man, did you hear that new Nas album? What they say? Most Orthodox Christians will say, hey, I don't listen to worldly music. But this is coming from the scriptures because all things, because it's in Christianity or it's in Islam, it doesn't mean that they own that. Because we are the teachers of them. So when we read in the scriptures, it says better it is to listen to the rebuke of the wise than to the music of fools.
That's true.
So when your children are acting like fools because they listen to certain things, and you give them the power to make decisions upon themselves as a parent, right? That's so great of you, oh great parents. You allow your children to participate in demonic rituals, oh great parents. You allow them to listen to the words of fornication. You allow them to rejoice and celebrate and gyrate to music that is slanderous and against God. Oh, wonderful parents. But then when you get older, you see a group of children that's kind of disgruntled with the community of praising God and they're separated, but you don't see the source that you planted inside of your child by giving them the ability to be idolatrous from the beginning. What is the most powerful tool in this planet?
Music.
Music. Music is stronger than your teachers as a parent. When you go through hard times in a relationship, what you listen to?
Music.
Music. When your homeboy got killed, what you listen to? Music. Master P. But you listen to music because it comforts you, it consoles you. It's a melody, it puts you in a trance, it allows you to come forth. And now we're so much into a celebratory season. Xmas is coming up. And you know, you walk into that Walmart, that spirit come on you. You fight it though, you fight it. No front. You doing to act all righteous. You fight it. Yeah, Let It Snow by Boys II Men. You walk into that and then you catch yourself. But it's a spirit, right? They're trying to put you, because they're trying to trance you into a spirit. They're walking you into it. And then that person at the front that's ringing the bell, Merry Xmas, and you about to say something. Then you, Merry, where's the sales at?
I keep it moving.
Yeah. But some people say bless you. I say bless you. God bless you. That's what I say. I don't have time to argue with you, tell you everything about my life and how I'm different. But in some aspects, I will entertain that. But in truth and reality, we have to be very, very careful on the things that we listen to, because our way of life is different. And this is why I say I don't knock Christianity for a lot of things. I don't knock Islam for a lot of things. Because you see things in other places, the other way of life, so don't make it wrong.
That's right.
Say it again.
And we have to be true. We had a serious discussion. It was like 2 months ago. We was like, if people adapted to a custom that was of a land and it wasn't against Yah, would it be unrighteous?
No. It doesn't go against the Most High.
If it doesn't go against the Creator, then
it doesn't go against the Creator. So
That's
there's adaptations. Our Heavenly Father shows us in the greatest and the highest pinnacle of His teachings that He gave His children the ability to have something. But if they had something that was strange or foreign, He made sure that if you participate in it, you give it to who? Him. Most High didn't ask for offerings, did He?
No.
But then if you want to give an offering and give it unto me. Devote your life unto me. I didn't want you to have a king.
you want it.
But if you have a king, make sure you devote that to me. I don't need no temple, David. But if you give me a temple, and not you give me a temple, but your son give me a temple, make sure it's devoted unto me. And that devotion is where we at in the season and the spirit that we're in now. Now, hold that in context, and let's go to another part. Do anybody know what role the temple played in our community in ancient times?
As far like what time frame are we talking?
Whatever time frame.
I mean,
Any temples.
I know in some aspects. Oh, go ahead. I know in some aspects, especially coming out of Babylon, since obviously our language was lost, it was a place where people could hear the Torah being read to them, because a lot of people were illiterate back then. So it was their ability to go to the temple to be able to hear the Torah, because it was commanded that every king shall have the Torah and know it. So since everybody, every normal, non-person of authority didn't have the Torah accessible to them, so they would go to the temple to have the Torah read to them, to be taught, so they can know what they were supposed to do and how to live their lives. Because this book is more than just a book of do's, but it is an instructions of how we're supposed to live our lives in certain things. So if you're a farmer, it would behoove you to go ahead and learn what you need to do for your land. If you was a bricklayer, then it would behoove you to know if you're a woman, then you would want to know what you're supposed to do during the times of need, and so on and so forth. So that was one aspect of the temple. I mean, there's plenty more others, but that's one.
Yeah, oh yeah. Perhaps. All right. One of the things that the temple was is simple. It's a simple breakdown. The temple is the place of sacrifice.
Also a seat of law.
Huh?
Also a seat of law.
Yeah. And most people, when they went there, they went to sacrifice. And when we think of sacrifice, we think of sometimes just something standing on the altar and burning. But this is not actually what happened. The temple actually became a place of it was a repository of all aspects of our way of life. So when people gave, the temple stored, the places they stored, they had storage houses around it. And they distributed to what? What kind of people?
To the poor.
To the poor, to the needy, to the widow, to the fatherless.
Yes.
So when our temple was going, that aspect of us taking care of the needy and those who need help almost vanished. So there was times when we had parts of us, and the main part of us in the temple was that holies of holies. And when we lost that Ark of the Covenant, it broke us. And I go into a little bit of the dedication of our people and towards their temple, because this is something that is very important to all of us that we have to consider. Because it also goes into our story today, and I'm going to go into a little history, then I'm going to go into the part of shot of the day, which is why you Shlach. Right? Mm-hmm. Let us go to, well, before we go there, we looked at the history of our forefathers. When Yaakov had a vision of angels ascending and descending, he knew that was a place of a God. And he made a deal with the Creator. And I'm going to go later on in detail with the deal. But he created this monument, a stone, a pillar, an erection, an altar, where he could remember that this is the place of God. So through our lives, everything that God has done to us, we made memorials of it. We made things to make us comfortable to know that we are about God and God is with us and he walks through our lives. And every day we see these aspects of us, but we tend to forget how near God is to us because we don't memorialize the blessings that he has given us. And our fathers were very heavy upon that. You know, even our children were memorials of the time of life we're going through. Sarah had Yitzchak, laughter. Because during that time, it was a joyful time for her. It was a time that God blessed her and gave her something special when she thought she couldn't have nothing at all. So now, we go into a time where Israel is looking for a king. They have a king. They had Saul. Saul was a good king, but there was problems with Saul. Saul had a little problems. He was suffering from maybe some bipolarism a little bit, which a lot of us have, you know. And then there was a King David. Now, King David, if you listen to the story of Melech Dawid, we start to realize that, hey, God picked some of the worst people in the world to do some of the greatest jobs. Now, that may seem bad to you, because you want a book that's going to speak great about everything. Oh, David used to fly in the clouds, and he came down and he threw lightning bolts. That's what we used to hearing, right? But God shows you in his history and his story, he gives you some of the dirtiest information about people, but he shows you the greatness of what he can do with them. I was just talking to Ron last night, and we were speaking, and I said, Jacob. Now, Christianity taught us that everything about Jacob was so beautiful, so great, so wonderful. But no, the first interaction you see with Jacob and Esau, Jacob is sneaking him out of his blessing. Esau, big brother, come home. Hey, brother, man, I'm starving, man. Oh, my goodness. Oh, woo. Oh, man, I'm hungry. Man, I'm starving. And Jacob said, I got something for you. Some of your birthright. You're like, beep, beep, please. That's what he said. Beep, beep, please. And he said, just give me the food. You can have it. So automatically, what kind of brother would try to swindle his brother? Even if he knew what God was going to say, why is the first thing in your mind when your brother is on his dying bed, you're trying to usurp him because that's his name? Jacob is a supplanter. If your name is Jacob, that means that there's something imprinted upon you that makes you a usurper or a supplanter. It's part of your nature. A lot of characteristics, a shame in Hebrew, which we say is a name. Now, when we say it's a name, we take away from the aspect of it's actually meaning a character. It's a character of an individual. So he tried it. And not only that, when his father, one thing about children, you got to know that the biggest thing you can get from your parents is a blessing. When you get married, you're looking for that blessing. When you're about to die, you're looking for that. When the parents are about to die, you're looking for that blessing. At the time, his father was the most vulnerable. He was blind. Him and his mother concocted something to deceive him, which cost him. So Jacob was just tricky, wasn't he? But God changed his life, and we'll get back into that. And you read about David, who was just a regular little boy who sheep herd, and nobody seen anything in him. They didn't really think that he could be anything in life, and all of a sudden he just has so much courage. Because a lot of times when you get older, you get so caught up in politics, you lose your courage. You lose the ability to stand for what's right. And that's kind of what we into today's state. We don't correct each other because who are we to correct each other? That's what everybody say. Everybody's with sin. Well, he without sin cast the first stone. But that's not what Israel is about. We have to be able to say, brother, sister, this is wrong. So David, he comes up there, he's a loving guy, but he's heroic. He takes on this gladiator. He takes on this giant Gilead. And Gilead is torturing, and he's tormenting all the Hebrew Israelites. This is a big bully, and this young buck that comes, and he says, Saul puts on the armor on him and says, hey, darn this, go out there and fight him. If you do this, I'll make you this, I'll make you that. David's like, too heavy for me. Give me that rock, give me that sling. That's Dave right there, but he's swole on this one. He on some
he's real.
Yeah, he's on some enhancement drugs a little bit. That was my comic book days when I drew that, you know. So he's a young buck and he's ready, and he's like, just give me a sling and a rock and I'm ready. And he goes and he becomes this hero. Now all of a sudden he's sucked into fame. He's sucked into this world of fame. And sometimes when you get sucked into fame, you forget about where you came from. And in this, David starts to have an ego about himself. He starts to have an ego about himself. He just don't like certain things, and if he don't like it, he gonna let you know. Remember when what was the man's name? Nabal.
He killed his
Yeah.
He killed Saul.
No, not to kill Saul. Nabal had a wife. Abigail. And David was sitting there on the cities and he was fighting off the invaders. And he sent a message to Nabal, hey man, can you get the warrior some food? He wasn't even king by then. He said, can you send the warrior some food? And he said, who are you? Nabal said back, man, who are you? He said, I'm out here fighting this war. You know what? I'm going to kill this man. David didn't like to be offended. And that's a lot of us, right? A person could offend God, but when they offend us, it is something that they need to die for. Y'all believe that, right? Because most of us, I watch your Facebook pages, and when people are disrespecting God or saying things against God, you may have a good debate with them or a healthy debate, or you may even go off. But when they offend you, you block them. But they wasn't blocked when their name was Patar, Ra, Tahuti, Yasharala, because they mixing it all up together. They put it all together. And it offend you then. It offend you when the Hebrews converted to Moors and they saying the stuff that they say. Didn't offend you? No, because don't offend you about God. No. Let somebody say something about you because that's what ego does. Ego has to protect itself. It has to annihilate any competition in its path. But David had a heart that God loved. He had a heart. Dawid means beloved. It is a connection of empathy. And in the ancient symbolism, you see a doorway, a tent peg and a doorway. It means two gateways to fasten each other together. It's more, they say David means beloved, but I would say it's more of empathy. He begins to empathize with him. But in that empathy, it removes you from being a disciplinary action. And earlier we talked about the archetypical roles of man and female. And one of the roles is the man is what? The disciplinary. And the woman is the universal nurturer. So what happens when the woman raises a male child who's supposed to be a disciplinary, but she's giving him all the universal nurturing without the application of discipline in them? Then in early stages of his life, he doesn't have the part of the brain to develop, which is the prefrontal cortex, that allows him to make disciplined decisions. He can't make sound decisions because he was pampered or spoiled. And this happens every day because we start to see it in our children now. And even though our children have males in the house, sometimes the males are removed because they're working so hard that the women are actually putting these universal nurturing and being over empathetic to these children where they actually are killing off our males. And in truth, this is the real reality of effemination of the black male. Because effemination of a male is not just the fact that you wearing tight jeans or you sagging or you wearing skirts, because that's not just the effeminization. The effeminization of the black male is also the thug aspect of who he is. Because when he becomes a thug, he's very emotional in his reasoning. And I remember watching some aspect of Gangland. And they had opposite gangs, and he said, "Why you got beef with them?" He said, "Because they the enemy." The guy asked him a simple question again, why? He couldn't explain it because it's more of an emotion that was generated to him and handed down to him than him making a logical decision to have a solution about a problem. And so now we get this beloved David, who, because he sinned, and if you're a sinner, you know the deal. A lot of times if you sin a lot, it's hard for you to discipline your children because you feel guilty of the sin you committed. So you may give them some discipline. But then when it comes to stuff that you know you did, you kind of back off a little bit because you know that you was a sinner. And David seen that. He was a sinner. David was a sinner. And David's heart was just huge. He loved God. And he knew how to work with God. He knew how to repent. So David said, "I want to build a temple for you, God." He wanted to build a temple for him. And all obstacles that even fell in his way, he still knew in his heart he had a vision, a goal that he wanted to do. But God told him he can't build a temple for him. He said, "You got too much blood on your hands." And that had to hurt David. Because I fought for you, God. What do you mean? That's good blood. That's good blood. This is good blood. I did this for you, Lord. But it's more so speaking of the mentality of an individual. Once you practice so much killing, it's hard for you to gain the spiritual place. It's hard. It's like a person that goes, you ever seen a person go off the wall? Mm-hmm. When they come back amongst the civilized, they're not here. They never right. Because all they looking is, they hear a loud noise, you better watch out because everybody in here might be killed.
That's right. That's right.
Now, I'm going to tell you the story, and I'm not lying. I had an Uber driver. And he was driving a nice truck. The Uber driver was driving a nice truck. He picked me up. And this is what he told me. I'm not lying. He said, "I'm glad to be back on the road." I said, "Okay, what happened?" He said, well, I was driving one time and I heard a loud noise and I woke up on the side of the ditch.
So this is your stop right here?
It's a joke, right? I'm like, it's a joke, right? This must be cash cab. Show me where the lights at. So
you was the driver, he was the driver.
I don't know. I was riding in the back, and he said because I've been in the military, and when I hear loud noises, I tend to black out. And they said they see me jump out the car and roll into a ditch for cover. Yeah, I was thinking about how Uber let this slide.
Pull over, I'm right here.
But it's something in them because they're trained to it. Because guess what? They have to sleep with one eye open. And when they're in war, they hear that, they know, they automatically take cover because they know something. So it's a response that's embedded in them. So now we start to see that David is too cruel. He had a lot of blood on his hands. He killed a lot of people. Saul said, "Go ahead and get me some foreskins for my daughter." He came back with a bag of thousands. And Saul was being ignorant because this was like a tradition of the Egyptians. He just wanted to see if he was good. But David was like, by any means, whatever you need me to do, I'll do it. And that separated him from God. So the closest dedication that he had to the temple is when he brought back the Ark of the Covenant. And the stories of the scriptures are so beautiful because they're basically other mythological motifs that correspond with the scriptures. But when you look at the story of David went to go get the Ark of the Covenant. He brought it back on the ark, on the cart. And you know the story of Uzziah. It hit a bump in the road. Uzziah went to save it and he died. Most High struck him down. David was angry with the Lord. So there your emotions. And there's times that we actually were angry with the Lord. I know in my life I had a time that I was actually angry with God. And it was one time where I really can correlate my anger with God and I can pinpoint it to something. But my frustration was, why do children suffer? And that's a whole other story, but that's where my anger derived from. And at this point, he said, a man just tried to put his hands out and save the ark, but he died, God. So David realized that it was his leadership and his impulsiveness to do something without proper procedures that cost other people their lives. So the next time, David did something different. They carried the ark this time, the way it was supposed to be done. Because sometimes our zeal for the Creator is blindly led and it's only encouraged by what we understand at the time. Think about it. Just because you believe in God and you think it's godly what you're doing, it doesn't make it godly. And in fact, your zealousness can make other people suffer and mislead people to their own death. So we have to be mindful that everything we do is according to our scriptures and the way of life that we have had before. So now, every step, King David, he sacrificed, he slaughters. He steps, they're dancing, singing, timbering, praise. Now, David is so excited, he does what? He dances out his clothes. You know the Hebrew version is getting hot here? Yeah. And coming out the clothes, not to take it all off, right? He came out of his clothes, but he was celebrating. And then he had a wife. What was her name? Micah. And she was angry with him. She was angry with him. But why was she angry with him?
They're married because of their relationship.
Their relationship. And because that ain't how a king should be behaving. Where your clothes at, David? And the funny thing about it is, Micah was punished. She didn't have children. She was put away. But the potential threat that was upon David, she seen. Because what she was worried about is what other women are thinking. What she was worried about is what's going to happen when he does this to a woman, and what will she do? And David, after that, had a bunch of women problems, didn't he? Mm-hmm. So she foreseen it, but she suffered and he suffered. But now, when David came and he brought the temple, what he brought the Ark of the Covenant, this is his devotion of the temple because that is the most secure part of the temple. He started to hand out blessings to everybody. He gave wine and bread to everybody. It was celebrating. It's a party. Israelites party and celebrate, right? Mm-hmm. We like to celebrate. And his dedication, and you can find this in 2 Samuel 6, he gave out the gifts to the backs of the people because he was just so excited about rebuilding and putting God's place back in the middle, because when you build a temple, the temple is the repository for everything, meaning those who are homeless, those who are hungry, those who are in need now get to receive the blessings. And I want you to just think about this concept. So Shlomo, who follows in his father's footsteps, he does a step greater because Most High said, I'm going to bless you. And then Shlomo, let's go to the 2 Chronicles, the 7th chapter. And when you go in there, I want you to understand that in chapter 6 is a reiteration of Numbers where it talks about compensation to others. So part of our tradition is when we were making things right, the Most High used the temple as compensation because when you did something wrong, you had to bring what? Money, an offering to replace what you did wrong. It's not like what we did today. And now, you see, today's society, if you did wrong to something to somebody, it says that you shall repay them and add a fifth. So if you told me I'm a nigga and you told everybody else I'm a nigga and I ain't worth nothing and everything, that's going to cost you. If you were wrong, right? That's going to cost you. How much that mean? Well, that mean a lot to me because I'm not no nigga. So let me think. That's about $5,000. How many times you said that? That's $25,000 right there. Yup. And add the fifth. You owe me 30. I ain't know. You said something else? We made it right, so it wasn't that you just do something wrong to somebody and if I offended you, I apologize. Because everything you have done wrong to somebody cost them something in their life. Now imagine if you really, imagine a society that was like that. Hey sister, you was gossiping about her? Yeah, but I heard this from Boom Quisha. Boom Quisha said that she said that, and I don't know who Boom Quisha get it from. Oh no, she told me to swear to God I won't say nothing to nobody. So I swear to God. So you don't know who you got. I know, but I can't say it. Okay, well you know you're breaking law. Okay, I just can't do it because that's my friend. All right, so now sister, we're sorry. The sister's really hurting. Yeah, and she's hurting bad. She was crying like $10,000 worth. And we want to tack on $2,500 on that, so you owe her $12,500. Oh my gosh! Oh no, brother, I didn't mean to. Oh, but it hurts her. Now imagine if that would be. How many of y'all be gossiping like this? Huh?
There won't be no more gossip.
Don't call me.
I don't want to hear it.
Don't call me about nothing. It better be direct. You better talk to me in precepts. You better meet me somewhere. Meet us, meet thou over by the brookers of Kebron. Okay, well I understand you now. Don't call me about nothing. I don't want to hear nothing. But that's how it was back in the days. Just like with the eye for eye, tooth for tooth. You know it wasn't saying not the other person tooth out, you not their tooth out. That's not what they were saying. Because guess what? If you hurt somebody and you broke their leg in the fighting, then you had to work for them until they got back on their feet. How are you going to work for them if you missing a foot?
Exactly. Say it again, all right.
So it wasn't literal. It was basically saying the context. You have to give the value thereof. Right? So in the time, Solomon now he talks about the temple is bringing back and these things, and he celebrated. He made a feast. He made a feast. Go ahead, read it.
So this is 2 Chronicles chapter 7 and verse 1. Let us all say hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
When Shlomo finished praying, the fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offerings and the feast offerings, and the glory of the Most High filled the temple. The priest could not enter the temple of the Most High, for the glory of the Most High filled the temple of the Most High. All the children of Israel were watching when the fire and the glory of the Most High came down upon the temple. And they bowed down to their faces to the ground upon the floor. And they prostrated themselves and were giving praise to the Most High. For he is good, and for his mercy endures forever. The king and the entire people were bringing an offering before the Most High. Shlomo brought the offering of 22,000 cattle, 120,000 sheep, and the king and the people dedicated the temple to Elohim. The priests were standing at their watches, as well as the Levites, with the Most High's musical instruments, which King David had made in order to give thanks to the Most High, for his kindness endures forever, with the instrument for David's praise in their hands, while the priests were blowing the trumpets opposite them, and all Israel were standing. Shlomo sanctified the interior of the courtyard that was in the front of the temple to the Most High. For there he performed the service of the burnt offerings and the fats of the peace offerings. And the copper altar that Shlomo had made could not contain the burnt offerings.
So they filling up. I mean, they got so much food coming in. They got a party going on. These people are actually having a joyous time. They're celebrating everything, right? And we've seen how David celebrated. We've seen how Solomon celebrated. Continue.
At the meal offerings and the fast. And at the time Shlomo instituted the celebration for 7 days, and all Yisrael was with him.
All right, so now it says, in my interpretation, it says a dedication for 7 days. I'm going to read it in the Hebrew. Listen. It says, Waya'asu bayom hashemini aseret ki Hanukkah hamizbeach asu shiva yamayim wehe ha Shabbat Yamin. What word you heard in there?
Hanukkah.
Hanukkah. So Hanukkah is not the first time you hear it. This is not something that we just made up. Hanukkah is not something that we just heard in the time of Maccabees. It's actually a devotion, a celebration to the temple, which we see that Solomon did it one way, David did it another way. We used to celebrate, we used to party, we used to enjoy, we used to make records. And the times where you go to people's house or you meet people, Israelites, it was a tradition to do what?
Party.
Party. And bring what? When you come to my house, just don't come to my house.
Yeah, bring a gift.
Yeah, don't do it in America. When you come to my house, you bring something.
I don't want something.
Yeah, because I might be busy. But if you got a cake in your hand, I might have to make time for me to you to talk. Right? That makes sense, right? You ever been chilling in your house, somebody come over your house and you really didn't feel like being bothered?
Okay.
I'm being real. Yeah, I ain't never felt that.
That's me all the time.
Yeah, you chilling, everybody can knock on the door. You like, boom. You like, Esau, tell him I'm asleep. Tell him I'm asleep. Where you came from? Oh, he said he came from the other side of town. Oh, Lord, all right. But then you got the wine, you got the little bag and stuff, everything cool, we good, we partying. What's up, brother? Let's talk. Hey. Oh, man. Gifts. I'll break that down later on now. So, we start to see that then. We start to see the celebration. We start to see it. And then we go into the time of Maccabees where there's a devotion. Now remember, the temple is the repository of everything in the nation, because once the temple is up and going, it starts to feed everybody and give them their needs. It starts to supply their needs. So you might see some people that say one thing and say another thing, but there is a cultural practice in the tradition among some of us that are slightly different than others. But if we read into the history, we have to see that there was a Hanukkah where there was an exchanging of things and giving one to another. And then the one you see in the Maccabees, it was also given into the temple. But once you rebuild the temple, which was a repository for everything, those who are homeless, those who are in need, those who didn't have for that year, those who didn't have, were given all of these things as able to, so they can supply or have their needs. So we have to understand that this is a devotion, a time of devotion for all of us in dedication. And it really brings me to the point of our portion today. So I want to go into the portion. All right, so we're going to backpedal a little bit because we start to realize that there's always this battle between two brothers, right? If anybody have male child, you always see the contending of the children. The boys are always contending. You got two male childs, you're going to see that little rivalry. It's just always there. In the ancient times, you start to see it in Hebrew writings, you see it in Sumerian writings, you see it in Babylonian writings. There is some aspects of what I say is that sometimes fiction is meta-truth. Now, some people didn't understand when I said that because, hey, I probably didn't even understand when I said it, right? But some fiction is better truth. And it means that a lot of times the mythology of things or the stories is extracting the deep truth of individuals and placing them into a story instead of everything that's surrounding them. Because in truth, your name represents more so of who you are. You represent a character. So like some people name it here, if you were Hebrew in the Hebrew tradition, some of your names would be stingy. Right? It would. Some people's name would be angry. It's just like the 7 dwarfs. But that would be your character. Now you are epitomizing your character because it represents you. You like to call yourself all beautiful stuff. But that doesn't represent who you are to that person. You ever seen that one person whose name is such and such, but you really don't even remember his name because all you remember him to be is a thief, or a sneak, or a swindler. What up, swindler? What's up, man? How you feeling? Yeah. I mean, that's just say. Because that's how we labeled it. We identified each other with one another. So now you start to see the same thing with Cain and Abel. You start to see it in Jacob and Esau. This is a natural thing because it is a meta truth. It is truth, period, because it's our history. But even if you question whether it's true or not, you know the stories actually happen in the everyday life. So it makes it more true than the reality you see. So it is truth. No matter how you argue it. There is a contention between two brothers, and brothers want to fight. Even the Torah says the son gets what? The firstborn gets what? A double portion. Now this is true, but for some reason in the scriptures, like a lot of times we start to see the younger usurp the older. But the law traditionally, even though that's a practice, there is empirical data that suggests that a firstborn son is basically your highest and most intelligent child. Your firstborn child is your most intelligent child. Right, Asha? All right. Yeah. Usually, okay. But there is data to prove that, not always, it's not always right? But there is data to prove that your first child is one of your highest in IQ. They just are. The reason why, we don't know. You could probably get too much semen, and then finally by the time you got the raggedy at the end. We don't know. But then a lot of studies suggest that, hey, it's because usually you got more time to spend with your firstborn child. The second one got to share it. The third one got to share it with 3 people. The fourth one got to share it. Then sometime after a certain amount of children, the hell with parenting up.
Now it's a child.
Yeah.
Now the children do it.
Like, oh man, go ahead. TV got you. You know, people do that. You see a lot of times people drop their kids off. They don't even want to be parents no more. They want somebody else to be parents with them. So now that struggle is there in that IQ. So that's something that we can take and we can say, hey, it's a meta truth. Because it's true beyond just the physical realm. It actually extracts the basic character of an individual and the basic truths and applies it to everyday life. So we can see things clearer now, and instead of covering up by favoritism or emotions or connection to an individual, we can see and focus on the character of an individual. So Jacob's name is supplanter. Is that not what he's doing?
Even when
So let's say this conversation is in English that Jacob and Esau is having, right? He said, hey, Harry. He said, what up, supplanter? Harry says, I'm hungry. Well, Harry, what you about to say, supplanter? Show me your birthright. See, you see how easy now you start to see the character of an individual when you extracted all the things that were there before beautifying or making this individual so glorious. You see that his character, because character is very important in Hebrew Israelite tradition. And that's why it's important that if you don't have character, you find yourself in a place full of stress. Because if you don't define yourself with good character, you start to doubt yourself. And if you don't even believe in your own decisions, oh, that's a lifetime of depression that you're about to have. You ever talk to people, and some of us may be like this here, and they says, I don't trust myself. I'm scared of my own decisions. You ever heard anybody say that?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm just scared that I might not make the right decision. And when you say that, when you talk like that, that shows that you doubt because in your past, you haven't been making the right decisions, and now you're so scared and you don't even trust yourself. So if you don't trust yourself, how can you trust anybody else? You don't. Right? So we look at the story of Esau, Harry. Right? Now Esau says, and I want y'all to think about it. Esau says, the hell with it. My birthright is somewhere down the line, right? Give me some for it. Because temporarily he wanted to be satisfied. And all y'all can laugh today and smile. Y'all can be happy. But when you make a temporary decision and push off a long-term blessing, your life is going to be hell. I'll give you an example. Young boys, young men, young women, anybody. You see a person you love, you like, and they hot, sexy. You love them. You want them now. I swear to y'all, laugh now, cry later. Promise you. If I'm lying, I'm going to die. That's all I'm going to tell you. If I swear to y'all, you can laugh now, cry later. You're going to be the first with the disease. Because you wanted something so bad for the temporary, but in long term, you got something else. Huh? I got a brother at my job, got 3 children, 3 different child supports. 3 different child supports. So now you got to find a job where he really ain't on the books. So they don't take everything from him. And when he makes, he only shows that he makes $300 every 2 weeks, and they take $127 out of that for one child. And then the other ones are coming. What happened? He Esau. He seen something he wanted immediately. He had a desire, a craving, and he sold his future for it. Now you get Jacob, the supplanter, the usurper. And he seen that God was at a place, and he said, hold up. God, if you give me, I'll give a 10th. I'll sacrifice now for a blessing in what?
Later.
The future. What's the difference between a grown man and a child? A child get a check, it's gone. A grown man get a check, he's supposed to preserve it. It's true, right?
Sometimes that ain't always the case.
No. But that's the defined, because sometimes you have to give all in order for your family to survive. But in truth, that things that you wanted before, because remember when everything used to be expensive when you were young. You used to get everything. But when you get older, you realize that stuff don't work no more. And then when we do put on that fly stuff, now it don't even feel right no more. I see Coach coming out the house the other day. That boy had a jumpsuit on. That was paid in full. I said, look at this brother showing out come out there. Had the radio in his hand, the set player.
He was looking like Ace Boogie.
He was fly. But what I'm saying is, you can still have that, but we don't have much of that when we get older, because now we have to say, this has to go to the future. So even you paying rent is still an investment in your future. It's a sacrifice. But now Yaakov is still homeless. He really doesn't have a place to stay. So when I hear this stuff, I don't really have money. We got to think about this, because we all do say it, right? I can't give my money this month because I really don't have it. Well, Yaakov was homeless. He didn't have nowhere to stay. He was roaming, but he still devoted his life to God. Yes. He was in the streets. He was like, yo, he was here. He got his wife, his children, and I know they pissed. They were pissed. Where we going, Yaakov? Yeah, whatever the Lord sent me. You know, he got tired. Where we going today? Lord, they spoke to me in 3 months. You know, that's when Raquel and Leah start getting close. You know, they only get close when they mad at the husband. They're like, yeah, man, I got a bunch of them. We can have a whole bunch of them. Yeah, take the stash. Like, they bonding now. But he starts to realize that, hey, this spiritual journey is different. And I want you to think about it. He had 4 wives following him on a spiritual journey. Now, some people will call that insanity. They'll call it insanity.
Some will call it devotion.
Some people call it devotion. But they knew that there was something about God inside of this man because he was becoming blessed everywhere he go and he went. And my father seen something in him that made him a blessing.
Yes.
Because when he was working with a band, and this is how you got to think. If you go to a job and you signed up for that job,